Some of the most dangerous battles in life are the ones nobody can see. You can look strong on the outside, show up for people, even pray and encourage others. But inside, you feel tired, alone, and emotionally drained. What if I told you that one of the most powerful prophets in the Bible once felt the exact same way? A man who performed miracles, a man who called fire down from heaven. Yet there came a moment when he sat down in the wilderness and said something shocking to God. He said, "Lord, I have had enough. Take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers." This wasn't a random man. This was Elijah, and his story reveals something many believers don't talk about. Even people with great faith can fight silent battles. But what God did next for Elijah shows us how heaven responds when we reach our lowest moment. And if you stay with me until the end, you might discover that your struggle does not mean God has left you. To understand why Elijah reached that point, we need to look at what happened before his emotional breakdown. Before Elijah experienced depression, he had just gone through one of the most intense spiritual battles recorded in Scripture. At the time, Israel was ruled by the wicked king Ahab and his wife Jezebel. Under their leadership, the nation had turned away from God and began worshiping false gods, especially Baal. Elijah stood almost completely alone as a prophet of God in a nation that had abandoned him. Eventually, Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal to a dramatic showdown on Mount Carmel. Hundreds of false prophets gathered. The challenge was simple. Whichever God answered by sending fire from heaven would prove to be the true God. The prophets of Baal cried out for hours. Nothing happened. But when Elijah prayed, fire fell from heaven and consumed the sacrifice. It was one of the most dramatic miracles in the Bible. In that moment, Elijah looked like a spiritual giant. But something important often happens after great victories. Exhaustion follows. After the miracle on Mount Carmel, word reached Queen Jezebel. Instead of repenting, she became furious. She sent a message directly to Elijah with a terrifying threat. She promised that within 24 hours, he would be killed. Suddenly, the prophet, who had just faced hundreds of false prophets, became afraid. Elijah ran for his life into the wilderness. And that is where we see the emotional breaking point. Alone, exhausted, and overwhelmed, Elijah sat under a tree and prayed one of the most heartbreaking prayers in the Bible. He said, "Lord, I have had enough. Take my life." Think about that. The man who had just witnessed a miracle from heaven now felt like life was no longer worth contending. This shows us something deeply human. Spiritual victories do not make us immune to emotional struggles. Even faithful believers can reach moments of deep exhaustion. One of the biggest reasons Elijah fell into despair was loneliness. He believed he was completely alone in his faith. In his mind, everyone else had abandoned God. He told God, "I am the only one left." Loneliness can distort how we see reality. When people feel isolated long enough, they begin to believe that no one understands them, no one cares, and nothing will change. Elijah had reached that emotional place, but God was about to respond in a way that reveals his incredible compassion. What is remarkable about this story is how God responded to Elijah's depression. God did not rebuke him. God did not shame him for feeling weak. Instead, God began restoring him step by step. First, God allowed Elijah to rest. Then God sent an angel to provide food and water. Sometimes when people are overwhelmed emotionally, they first need rest and care, not correction. After Elijah regained strength, God spoke to him again. But God didn't appear through dramatic signs like earthquakes or fire. Instead, God spoke through a gentle whisper. That quiet moment reminded Elijah that God was still with him. And then God revealed something Elijah did. There were 7,000 people in Israel who had not abandoned God and bowed to Baal. Elijah wasn't alone after all. His pain had simply made him feel that way. Elijah's story carries powerful lessons for anyone struggling with depression, loneliness, or emotional exhaustion. First, even strong people struggle. Feeling overwhelmed does not mean your faith is weak. Second, loneliness can lie to us. Just because you feel alone does not mean you actually are. Third, God cares about our emotional needs. Before speaking to Elijah about his mission, God first restored his strength. And finally, your lowest moment does not cancel your purpose. After Elijah recovered, God continued to use him. His story is powerful. If you are watching this and feeling emotionally drained, you are not the first person to feel this. Even Elijah, the same God who met Elijah in the wilderness, still meets people today. He sees your exhaustion. He hears the questions. And just like Elijah, your story is not finished yet. Sometimes the place